6TR, the bright side of Staffordshire.
6TR, the bright side of Staffordshire for a Friday. You just heard Hayseed Dixie, Ace of Spades. Well, they're at the Sugarmill tomorrow. So it's my great pleasure to have John Wheeler, a.k.a. Barley Scotch, on the phone right now. Hello there, John. You're on the road at the moment. Where are you right now?
I am 62. Somewhere between Leeds and Manchester.
Yeah. Because you're coming up, obviously, tomorrow to be in Stoke, a place where you played a few times at the Sugarmill.
Indeed, yeah, we have several different times. About once every 2 years for the last 12 or so, I reckon.
You've done that many gigs. So I think it's 1,200 gigs or something like that you've done. And obviously some of them do stand out.
Yeah, I think we're just past 1,200 in, 30-something countries. One day when I get a little bit of time, I'm going to sit down and actually count them all up.
Yeah. Well, you've got no time, because like I say, you're in the middle of this UK leg of the tour to promote the album and the single. We'll talk about those in a minute. But the UK crowd's still doing you proud?
Well, yeah, man, they keep it up. That's all I ask for. At this point, being a cult band like we are, if continue to play at the level that we're at, that to me is success. Success is not losing ground at this point. I mean, we've been doing this band for 17 years,
Yeah.
I got on a plane to come back over here a couple of weeks ago. My mother's now 77, and she said to me, your life is so hard. It's not too late. You could always go back to school and retrain as a lawyer, maybe. And I'm like, dang, Mom, that's some bold shit. And all the things she could aspire for me to be, she wants me to be one of those scumbags. I mean, I've read Bleak House, man. I got a lot of time going down the road. I've read all 1,200-something pages of Charles Dickens' Bleak House. You want to know anything about the legal profession? Just read that book. Hey, paper that creates paper. It's Kafkaesque. And if anybody's listening to you out there is a lawyer, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry for saying this. I'm sorry that you chose to devote your life to such a miserable profession.
That's mums for you. Mums always want the best out of what they think there shouldn't be.
See, what annoys me is that I think that I did do better than that.
Yeah.
at least most of the time I go down the road and try to make somebody smile. I think most of the lawyers out there should all retrain to be fluffers in porn movies. Give somebody some pleasure.
Finally, give some pleasure back.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, or deliver meals to old people. That'd be useful.
Yeah.
Or just sit and talk to old people. There's a lot of them sitting around need somebody to talk to.
Very true.
You can explain the tax code to them, maybe, when they're having difficulty sleeping.
15th studio album is called Free Your Mind and the Grass Will Follow. It's a mix of R&B and soul classics. You had a lot of scope to go at. How did the track selection take place?
Mainly by the lyrical content. I mean, I guess because I'm the one that sings them, I think about the words more than other people do, maybe. But, every one of our records has a bit of a theme to it, but it's not always really in your face. I don't necessarily want the band to, be leveling a big heavy message on anybody, but if you want the subtext, it is in there. It's there for you to find if you want to, scratch the surface. Most of the songs deal with what? I'm sorry, my throat's a little sore. Deal with what I think are basically the two biggest lies that have ever been sold to working people, and we're seeing these played out right now around the Western world. But to me, the two biggest lies that have ever been sold to anybody are, one, that there is such a thing as race from a biological point of view. I mean, we share something like 53% of our DNA with a banana, and I say we is like every human.
Yep.
Not black guys have 52% of their DNA and white guys have 48% of their DNA or whatever. No, we all share the same amount of our DNA with a banana. If we weren't the same overall species, I couldn't have sex with a black girl and get her pregnant. A chicken can't mate with a duck. So without even getting into the science of it, just to bring it back down to the street level, there ain't no such thing as race. There simply isn't. You get a black guy and raise him in Britain, he's British. You get a white guy and raise him in China, he's Chinese culturally. But these things are not they're not intrinsic to our being or our biology. And the idea that they are is just a bunch of bullshit, basically. And the second big lie, in my view, is that every country does this in their own way, but the notion that there's some sort of glorious national past back at the time when we had it all going on, and we could recapture this glorious national past if this other imaginary group would just stop throwing a spoke in the monkey wrench, Those things are both lies. Yeah. And so the songs on the album are supposed to be to challenge and just, and to reject these things. Having said that, if you just want to listen to it at your barbecue and sing along, that's cool too. You know, I don't want to stand there and lecture anybody and beat them over the head with the hammer of a message. Let Billy Bragg do that. He's good at it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tend to agree with him a lot of times, but I think what he winds up doing is preaching to the choir mostly. I mean, pretty much anybody who goes to one of his shows at this point knows what to expect. So, you know, he's not going to get a lot of potential UKIP voters at his show. And I want to talk to those dudes. I mean, like when we hired our publicist to promote this next record, they were talking about, we'll try to get a review in The Guardian. And I said, well, that's great, but everybody who reads The Guardian probably pretty much already is down with the program, you know?
Yeah.
I want you to get me in the Sun and the Mail, you know? And they said, you want to talk to them? I said, absolutely, because those are the people that read that are the people who need to hear this record. You know, the people who read The Guardian, I mean, I'd like for them to hear it, but it's not going to, you know, it's not going to enlighten them.
Yeah.
Not that anything I'm doing is going to enlighten anybody, but I mean, I'm just saying the people that need to be mulling these issues over are probably the people who are reading the news porn, not the people who are reading the Guardian or the Telegraph, for that matter. I mean, both of those are much more well-written papers. I read them both when I'm in the UK. My personal views on most issues tend to lean more toward the Guardian, but not on every issue. But I kind of like the writing style of the Telegraph better, and they're both papers.
Yeah, yeah,
the
for
ones
sure.
that are a bit looser, and so I'm like, you know, but oddly enough, they have the lowest readerships. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
The Guardian and Telegraph have the least readerships of any of the national papers. Sun's number 1, the Mail's number 2. So, you know, those are the people who need to hear this record, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. I never thought of it like that. Of course, it's always a positive.
Well, now you have.
Yeah, I have. It's in my head
Believe
now.
me, I spend all day thinking about it like that.
Yeah. No. Again, it's a positive message.
You don't want to get stuck in an echo chamber, and it's real easy for people to do that. And I think, you know, if you come out of the gate too partisan, then you just slam the other side shut. But a lot of these sides are also imaginary. Like when I said, you know, I'll read the Telegraph and the Guardian. And on some issues, I'll agree with the Guardian. On some issues, I'll agree with the Telegraph. I think very few people out there are straight partisan people, you know.
Yeah.
They're portrayed to be so for marketing purposes or whatever, but most people aren't. Just like most people out there don't just listen to one kind of music.
Oh.
We'll do a flame at the end of our set every night, an old Bangles song mixed in with Highway to Hell. And all the rockers sing along. They know every damn word, you know. How is that?
Yeah.
How is it that all these, like, you know, Motorhead and Sabbath wearing, you know, T-shirt wearing rocker dudes can all sing "Close Your Eyes"? Give me your hand. They all know that song.
Yeah.
So I mean, what I'm saying is that most people out there listen to more than one kind of music. At least anybody I want to drink any beer with does.
Yeah. But anyone who says I only listen to rock or I only listen to rap or whatever, to me is a liar or somebody who hasn't got a great taste in music, because you can't just listen to one thing. It's so narrowing the mind, isn't it, to just listen to one thing, even if that's what you're doing.
Yeah, well, you're making yourself tribal. You know, like these tribal ideas reflect themselves, and they push out in all kinds of radical ways and all kinds of distortions. I mean, to me, extreme nationalism is just a distortion of people trying to find meaning in a context. I mean, really, all of us have been listening in the West to the wrong philosophers for the last couple of 100 years. We've all been listening to John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham and the economists that go along with them, people like Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek, people who believe in the supply side thing. It's a real libertarian, every man for himself kind of view that's based on this conception of a human being as being an agent that's pursuing maximum pleasure maximization. And that's not what experience bears out. That's not what we actually are. What we actually are is spirits seeking meaning in a context. And I say spirit in this sort of German Geist sense, of not really a religious version of spirit, but say, you know, consciousness with a vector. What we're actually doing is we're looking for meaning in a context. And the context can be your nation, it can be your social group, it can be your community, it can be the human race. It depends on what you view your horizons as. But I think that's what we're seeing played out with people. The people that want to build walls are trying to wall up their context in which they believe they create their meaning. I mean, otherwise you can't explain like why somebody would take care of an aging relative or spend their entire life raising a really disabled child or something. I mean, those people are not motivated by money. Those people are motivated by something else. They're not motivated by pleasure maximization either. You know, the utilitarians and libertarians have to make some very twisted and weird arguments to explain the behavior of somebody who devotes their life to taking care of somebody in a situation like that. I think it's very admirable, by the way, but there's no way you can explain that with trickle-down economics. You have to explain that, unless you want to call him an idiot, and I don't want to call him an idiot.
No.
I want to call him a very noble person. So the only way you can explain that is by finding a different way to ground your sense of meaning. And I think the correct way to do that is that, we are people who are looking for the opportunity to create meaning in a context.
Yeah.
And the context of the set can be your church group, it can be your society, it can be your world. I set my sights on the world, but I can understand why not everybody does. I mean, I travel a lot more than most people do, so I get the opportunity to kind of dance between the raindrops in different places a lot more than somebody who spent 30 years working at the same job in the same town. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But the only time it becomes self-determination has to be differentiated from self-superiority. They're two very different things.
Yeah. Great message. You're sort of answering about 4 questions at once for me, so we're going to get through this quite quickly, to be honest. Just getting back to the music, it talks to everyone, of every marital status. It's all there.
You'd probably have to ask somebody in the audience more than me as far as how things come across. But, I mean, talking in an interview, I'll speak a lot more to the backstory and what's behind the curtain than I do when I'm doing the show. I mean, doing the show, we go on stage and we try to make it a party. I mean, I make some jokes about things. I try to point out some absurdities, but I don't stand there and give anybody a lecture on creating meaning or anything. It would take too long. It's mostly music, and most of the things that I'd want to say message-wise are somewhere in the lyrics of the song. Nobody needs me to stand there and lecture about it,
Yeah.
But so first and foremost, it should be a party. I do think that music ought to get to your brain by way of your gut, not to your gut by way of your brain. So that's what we're trying to achieve. I mean, you can ask somebody who's been to one of the shows if we achieve it or not.
But yeah, like I say, it's something for everyone. The songs that you choose to do,
they're not partisan. None of the stuff I want to talk about has to do with vote for this guy or vote for that guy. That's all small picture stuff.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the big picture. What's behind it all.
Yeah. And, of course, like doing the Soul album, you've done a lot of rock. And I also read somewhere that you're not the biggest fan of Coldplay, so you're not going to be covering any of those songs.
Well, none of the ones that I've heard thus far can I make very much sense of the lyrics. They all seem to be kind of written from the point of view of a very individual perspective, sorting out very individual psychological and emotional issues. And while that's, a thing in its own right, it's not something that interests me very much.
No. The song Yellow, you mentioned, he just never explained what was yellow.
Not really, no. I used to have a theory about it. I used to talk about it. I used to say, well, if you eat a lot of asparagus and all this macrobiotic food that apparently that poor guy's ex-wife was trying to cram down him, your pee would come out real yellow. But if you were drinking enough beer, your pee would come out clear, you see. And so I draw from that the conclusion that the man's just simply not drinking enough beer. But he might be now. I mean, I think he seems like a pretty nice dude. Actually. I think a lot of his problem was probably the woman that he was married to, who doesn't seem like a very nice person. I don't know. I mean, we were doing a festival in Denmark one time many years ago, and I remember asking the lady that was driving the bands from the hotel back to the stage. I asked her, so who was the nastiest musician you ever had to drive? Who was the most unpleasant person? And she said, well, actually, the musicians were all pretty much okay. I've driven. She said, the worst person I ever drove was the wife of that guy in Coldplay. And she didn't even know who she was. She didn't know she was a movie star or anything. And I said, really? What about you? I don't know, whatever her name was, blonde-headed woman. She was awful, just demanding this, demanding that. I had to drive her up the stage, wanted her rug laid down so she didn't get her feet in the mud. Just said she was just the most sort of really self-important person she'd ever met.
Wow.
And I said, what was he like? She said, oh, he was lovely.
Yeah. Usually the case. Finally.
So, a lot of people, I think, saw them get divorced and thought, oh, man, she dumped him. I think, maybe not.
Yeah.
He woke up one day and said, this sucks.
Yeah. Tomorrow you're in Stoke. You've mentioned beer a few times. Are the two going to mix well together tomorrow?
Well, I mean, we want to play every town we can play. I mean, if we came over to the UK and only played the major cities, we'd do 8 or 9 shows and leave. And I can't, not that Stoke is a minor city, but I mean, I'm talking about a lot of bands will come over and just do London, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Newcastle, maybe Leeds or Sheffield, and off they go. And that's not really a proper tour in my view,
Yeah.
I actually kind of enjoy playing. We play some pretty small places, I mean, as far as small towns. I mean, as long as we can get 300 or 400 people in a room, I'm willing to do a gig. So, we normally sell out or come close to it and stuff.
Yeah.
If the room holds 450, maybe something like that. So that's a good enough audience to start a decent fight. So, let's have it.
Let's have it. Well, thank you very much. Good luck with the album and the rest of the tour. And you take care, John.
Thank you, man. Good talking to you. Bye-bye.